regardless of whether or not you're a 10-person organization or a 10,000-person organization, our tool, if it's affordable to you, can be used. That's not true. I think companies really need to say, who is our core customer? Is it the small, medium-sized business? Is it the large enterprise business? And then they need to take the time to really go out and understand who that customer is, what their needs are, what their pain points are, and then design a solution around that.
We have the pleasure of welcoming Jennifer McClure today to our interview series. I'm Aishwarya Jain from the peopleHum team. I have with me Sekar. Sekar is EVP of Engineering. His prior stints include various product engineering roles in SuccessFactors, SAP, Yahoo, and Informatica, with 30 years of experience in both enterprise and consumer internet products. Also, just a quick introduction of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM, that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year, and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. Over to Sekar now.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Introducing our guest, Jennifer McClure is the CEO of Unbridled Talent and Disrupt HR. She is consistently rated as a top speaker at major events and conferences. She has over 25 years of experience leading human resources and talent acquisition efforts. She has spoken at over 200 industry-related conferences and events, where she has delivered keynote presentations and provided workshops or training in the areas of leadership, executive development, presentation and communication skills, and talent acquisition strategies. Jennifer, we are really happy to have someone of your stature and expertise in our interview series today. Welcome, Jennifer. We are really thrilled to have you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to join you.
Thank you. So the first question that I had for you, Jennifer, was, can you tell us a little bit about your journey that has brought you to Disrupt HR and Unbridled Talent?
Sure. I started my career way back in the day, came out of university and chose a career in what was then called personnel management. That was pre-human resources or talent or people operations time. So really chose that thinking that would be an opportunity in the organization to have influence and impact over the most people that I could. I realized I couldn't be the CEO right out of the gate and probably not an executive or a VP. And so I felt like, what's the position in the organization that has the opportunity to influence and impact the most people? And so right or wrong, I chose human resources. And I believe 30 plus years later that was a really good decision and still very applicable today. So I spent about 18 and a half years in the corporate world in leadership and executive roles in HR with responsibility for, generalist activities, all of the HR realm, recruiting, talent acquisition, learning development. And then the company that I worked for was sold, and I had the opportunity to kind of think about what would be next. And was really looking to kind of maybe make a shift out of the corporate world. Thought about starting my own business at that time, but thankfully engaged a coach, got a lot of really good advice from networking with people that I was nowhere near ready to start my own business. Didn't have a clue about what I would offer, what I would do, or how I would sell it. And so they really gave me great advice about maybe joining another organization where I would have the opportunity to learn how to develop business, to market my services, to understand who I could help. And so I joined an executive search firm. And the owner there was just a wonderful mentor, someone who from the beginning was willing to help me to learn those skills with the understanding that maybe eventually I would start my own business. And he was okay with that. And I think that's great leadership. So I spent about 3.5 years there, got an executive coaching certification while I was there. So I was able to not only help leaders identify the talent to bring into their organizations, but also work with leaders on improving their skills and making more of an impact. During that time, started teaching people how to use LinkedIn or how to use social media for recruiting, or how to be more of a strategic leader, and those opportunities of just kind of giving that information away for free and helping people who came across my path then turned into opportunities to speak, which is the seed that had been planted way back in my early career as wanting to be a speaker someday and do training and workshops and teach. And so that the more I had the opportunity to do that, the more I realized that was what I was ultimately passionate about. So I started Unbridled Talent in 2010, and the business is speaking and training, and I do a little bit of executive coaching, and really love that opportunity to work with leaders to build careers that they love and live lives that matter and have and create impact in their organizations. While I was doing that, about 4 years into that, connected with an entrepreneur here in the Cincinnati area and just was kind of advising him and his company in the HR technology space and having good conversations and kind of sharing my thoughts and ideas that, yes, I get to speak at a lot of great conferences and events, but I felt like there was an opportunity to maybe hold an event in our city, Cincinnati, where different people had the opportunity to speak. Maybe people who weren't professional speakers, who had an idea or something to say about the workplace or the future of work. And so thankfully, Chris Ostich is his name. Very much did not let me just have that be an idea and really got excited about it. And so he gets the credit for being the founder of Disrupt HR because he made the idea into a reality. And we held our first event in December 2013. Not really expecting that it would be anything more than maybe a once or twice a year event in Cincinnati, but people heard about it. People at the event wanted to take it to other places. And from there, Disrupt HR has grown to last count, 157 licensed cities in 37 countries. Over 5,000 Disrupt HR talks have been given. Over 400 events around the world in multiple languages and communities and cultures have been held. And it's just a joy for me to see people who never would have had the opportunity to get up on a conference stage or maybe never want to, but yet they have an idea and they're willing to challenge themselves in a fun format to get up and share it. So that's still what I do today, speaking training, even though that's not, not a lot happening in the in-person space right now. In Disrupt HR events are on pause around the world as well, but I think the opportunity still exists to share ideas, to teach, and to help people.
Oh, very interesting journey. So one of the things that you started with was you got into this HR profession primarily because you thought that it is a profession where you can influence the organization, the leaders, and things like that, right? So as a HR professional, what do you think are things that a professional needs to do to influence a culture of an organization, particularly when most of your workforce is remote, as in these types of circumstances, or when it's a very distributed workforce across the world and so on? So how do you influence the workplace culture in these types of circumstances?
Sure. I think this is, for all leaders, but I think HR often is leading the charge on this. First, it's really understanding the core values of your organization. And if you don't have those or they're not clear, taking the time with your leadership team to really develop and understand and set in stone, this is who we are and this is what we stand for and this is how we navigate the world, so then as leaders, we can look to those core values and reference back our decisions. Does this really match with who we say we are? So I actually was just kind of thinking, yesterday was Sunday and laying here on the couch, kind of thinking about, how I can add value in the world. And it's common to, have things that are catchy or whatever. And for whatever reason, some P's just came to mind for me. It's purpose, it's path, it's positioning, it's people. Profit is certainly in there, so it's nice that all of those begin with P's. But for me and my organization, as I'm a one-person organization, but I'm also having to look at how do I pivot. So to do that, pivot being another P word, but I don't want to pivot away from what I believe in, which is again the opportunity to influence and impact, and the opportunity that we have as people leaders. That's what I talk to leaders about. That's how I encourage them to make an impact in their organization. But how do I deliver that? And what am I delivering? So to go back for me as an individual business owner or for leaders of large distributed organizations, what is the core of who you are? And then how do you make decisions on how you proceed? So if you are an organization that says we put our people first, they're our most important asset, then your first decision in a difficult economy is more than likely not to lay off all of your employees, so nobody wants to do that. But if your number one thing is profit or maximizing revenue, then you're going to look at how to cut expenses, and people are a big expense. So it really is important that we as leaders, we've been a couple of months into this now. Nobody's still doing it, well, or understanding how to proceed forward. But if you haven't taken the time to take a breath, to take a step back with your leadership team and say, who are we? What do we stand for? How do we approach business in general, not during a pandemic, but what is our approach to business? And then how do we make decisions that reflect those core values? I think that's where HR can really lead, by helping leaders to understand that core responsibility. And then HR often is the one that's kind of tasked with how do we live that out in the world.
Excellent. How do you think technology, HR technology as such, plays a role in this? Obviously, you've been in this for almost 25 years, right? So you have seen various phases of how technology has evolved in the context of HR.
Right.
Do you think that it has delivered on the promises that people originally envisioned for HR technology to deliver? And what are your thoughts on that? How has it evolved?
Sure, that's a great way to frame it. Has it delivered on the promise? I guess there are so many promises out there when it comes to HR technology. And a lot of them have not delivered on their promise. Yeah, as you said, when I started in HR 30 plus years ago, there was zero technology, none. There were typewriters and books and files and note taking on note cards and things like that. And so to see that evolution over time, I mean, certainly technology has made not just the world of human resources, but business in general, the opportunity to communicate well is there. Now, whether or not we use the phone or computer technology or email or now Zoom technology or the types of things where we can do video calls, well, is still dependent upon us as human beings to understand the basic concepts of communication and what's effective communication. In terms of technology, I think, yes, the promise of helping us to collect data, to understand our workplaces, to use that information to make better decisions, to predict more of where we need to be in the future, that has really been an advancement in the workplace and for HR leaders in general. And there are numerous technologies out there that can help us. The failure, I think, is both on the part of the HR technology providers to understand the real needs of human resources and people leaders in organizations, and then to provide tools that they can use to deliver on what their job is, and also on human resources leaders and people leaders to communicate what it is that they're trying to accomplish. Again, do we need technology just for technology's sake? That everyone is now going to be using this new tool or platform, and then you look around a couple of years later and we've got so many tools that we're using that people are having to log in to different places and they don't talk to each other. That was, I think, a failure that kind of happened from everyone reaching out for technology and not thinking, again, what is that we're trying to accomplish? What is the best tool for us to use to do that? And if that tool is not delivering, how do we find one that works instead of continuing to bolt on things to things that don't work? So the answer to your question, I guess, would be it has delivered, I think, a lot of efficiencies and the ability for us to understand things quicker, faster, better. The failure has been that we haven't been really clear on what it is that we want the technology to help us accomplish.
Where do you think, if you were to, let's say, advise a HR technology company which is looking at, okay, what do I have to build over the next 5-10 years so that I can make a big difference. Obviously, there are a lot of existing tools which are dedicated to recruiting, some dedicated to just core HR, some for learning and management, and there are also some tools which are integrated, which try to integrate. I won't say they are integrated; they try to integrate.
Right.
So, how do you see this panning out over the next 5 years or so? What predictions would you make on things that would actually make a HR professional sit and say, yeah, that's something that I would be really keen to know more about?
Sure. I think the companies that both in the past and certainly the ones in the future who take the time to really understand who their customer is are the ones who will be able to really deliver what that customer needs. There are far too many technology solutions out there that look at their customer as almost anybody and everybody. So regardless of whether or not you're a 10-person organization or a 10,000-person organization, our tool, if it's affordable to you, can be used. That's not true. I think companies really need to say, who is our core customer? Is it the small, medium-sized business? Is it the large enterprise business? And then they need to take the time to really go out and understand who that customer is, what their needs are, what their pain points are, and then design a solution around that. It's not just in the HR technology world, but it's so many times where, especially right now, okay, so the world has changed forever and it will look different in the future. And there are already people who are racing ahead to say, we think it's going to look like this and we're going to develop a solution to solve that. I think they're missing the boat because they're not saying, okay, the real opportunity is to decide who are we going to serve, and then to go out and talk to as many of those people as we can, get information from them about what their pain points are now and what they anticipate they'll be in the future, and then build the technology or recreate the technology to serve that. There's room for people who are out there taking gambles, I think, on it's going to look like this, we think, so we're going to try that. But still, if they don't know who they're going to serve, then who are they selling that to? So the real miss for technology providers across the gamut and for HR technology providers in general, if you go to any large conference or event where there's an expo hall and you walk through that conference expo hall and you ask the people that are in the booth, who is your client? Who's the ideal client and what are their problems? They probably have some marketing speak around that than really an in-depth understanding of what the problems are of their customers. So technologies providers, people like myself, I provide a solution through learning, through challenging leaders. I need to really understand what the people that I serve are going through during this time, what their needs are, so that when I come out and through this, I will have keynotes, talks, workshops, etc., that address those pain points rather than just saying, well, before I talked about the future of work and disrupting HR and I'm just going to put it on pause. I'm going to do that again in a year or 2 years or whenever. That's not going to be the way to be successful. It's going to be really understanding what's happening with the people that I serve now or with a technology provider serves now. What are their needs? What are their problems? Design solutions for that.
Thank you. It's interesting perspective, particularly when you say that, trying to understand the pains that the customers are actually, or the potential customers are actually going to face, and to be able to gear up yourself to address those.
And to be very specific on who that customer is, not just HR leaders.
Yes. Okay.
Much more specific in that.
Yes. Okay. So shifting gears a little bit from the technology to more on leadership and coaching and so on. So obviously in your current role, you're talking to multiple leaders. You have talked to leaders when things were quite, on the growth phase and things like that, pre-COVID era. And then you've also, I'm sure you've also talked to leaders during this time. So what do you see as the qualities of the leaders where you think that, these are some of the qualities in some of the leaders that you're interacting with, where you see that these guys are actually going to thrive through this uncertain time and they will still be able to be very successful and come out very successful once things get back to some different state and some different steady state later. What types of leadership qualities do you see in them?
Sure. So many people out there doing really good things in terms of leadership that I think are being recognized, and their companies will benefit from that, even if they're struggling during this time. And those are the leaders that are being quick to communicate what the current state is. Even if the current state is that we're evaluating what we need to do in order to be successful in the future. The leaders who are hanging back, who are waiting to know what the plan is before they communicate to their teams and to their company and their people and their customers what they're doing to manage through this, they're getting left further behind, and I think creating more stress and confusion for their employees. So there's two kind of paths here. You know, there's the leader that says, wow, things are bad. We are suffering. We're going to have to, lay off some of our workforce, our revenues falling, this is really bad. To find a way to compassionately communicate that, number one, I understand the current situation. Number two, we are taking the time to understand how to react to the situation and to do the best thing to go back to our core values, our purpose, why we're here, and that we are going to communicate with you every step of the way how this affects you, how this affects our company, our customers, and the decisions that we're making and why. That is real leadership. That's tough leadership, but that's real leadership. Also, the leaders who are saying, here's what we see happening in the future. Here's how we're going to change. Here's what we're going to do. We're also willing to look at if that's not working, what we can do in order to continue to thrive and to position ourselves for success. It's that recognizing the situation, finding a way to clearly communicate it, showing empathy, compassion, transparency, all of those buzzwords, but they are real things, and helping people to understand that you get that this is tough and that you're not immune just because you're in the leadership role to stress, to negative events, etc. But as a leader, you can't, just show up and do a live town hall with your employees and cry. But you could cry if it's legit, but I mean, you can't say, well, wow, things are so tough, I don't really know what to do. That's not leadership, because then you just show everybody that we don't know where we're going. But you can say, this is something that I've never faced before. We've never faced before as a company. We don't want to be quick to react and make the wrong decisions, but yet we know we need to move with speed. So we are doing this, and this, so it's more about, I recognize what is happening, but here's the plan we're taking now. If that plan should change, and it may need to, I will be communicating with you when that happens. So that's what's needed. And that's what some of the leaders that are rising to the top are doing. Those that are just sitting in their virtual boardrooms and making decisions and then communicating after the fact the decision, whether it's positive or negative, I think you've created fear in the unknown and the uncertain with your people and with your teams. And that's going to be a disease as well.
What do you suggest as also career tips for leaders who are not necessarily managers? These are leaders in the company. They are individual contributors. They are thought leaders, and they are doing tasks that have been assigned to them, having thoughts that they want to share with people. They don't have a team that is reporting to them, but they want to, look for opportunities now, so that at the end of this, hopefully, where it is a better state than where we are now, they feel that, that time that I spent during the lockdown, where I was probably working from home, but I was obviously doing my job and so on, it didn't hamper my career. I still, at the end of it, my career has still developed. I have progressed in this organization and so on. So what types of career enhancing tips would you suggest for these types of thought leaders, individual contributors in an organization?
Sure. I want to be very sensitive. I see a lot of comments online from people like, oh, if you're not using this time to develop a new skill and to do this, and then there's the backlash of people who be like, I'm just trying to keep my kids educated and we're all living in the same room, So first, let's recognize that for some people, this is an opportunity to reset. For some people, it's a forced opportunity to reset and to take the time to say, what can I learn? How can I grow? And I definitely think that's, for people like myself, my children are grown, I'm not homeschooling. I'm not, trying to keep, working from home in a place that's not set up for that, because that's what I do. So I have the opportunity to say, how am I going to grow during this time? And what's that opportunity? For people who are navigating chaos right now, just give yourself grace, navigate the chaos. But for all of us, both when that person who's navigating chaos and the people who are looking for opportunities to grow, it's the same advice that I would give for someone who, the HR technology question earlier. Who do you serve? If you're a thought leader, if you have thoughts that you shared both in the past or in the future, getting real clarity, and if you didn't have that before this pause, this reset, getting real clarity on who you serve, spending time communicating with those people. How are you navigating this change? How are you doing this? What problems are you facing? What solutions are you looking for? And then deciding, can I provide those solutions? Do I have solutions to offer them to the problems that they're serving? That's a real opportunity. I think, a phrase that I've heard from multiple people is, what does this make possible? So with everything that's happened in the last couple of months and what will be happening for the near future and beyond because of how the world has changed, what does this make possible? Does this make possible that if I didn't feel like I was in the right place, or maybe I was falling behind before, or maybe my thoughts that I was sharing weren't resonating with people, this opportunity makes possible the time for me to spend some time getting real clarity on my skills, what my talents are, what I can offer, but even more importantly, getting real close to who, call it a customer, but if you're a thought leader, maybe those people are buying from you, but maybe you're sharing your thoughts, who that end customer is for my message. Am I really serving them both now and for what they need in the future? And in order to understand that, I've got to be communicating with them. So take this opportunity to build relationships, to understand your customers, to survey your community. What is it that they need from you now? And maybe, like in my case, my path for the last several years has really been talking to leaders from a strategic leadership perspective, how to lead your company, how to lead your team, how to make an impact in the organization. At the same time, both as someone who's been in HR and hired hundreds of maybe thousands of people over the years, who spent time as an executive search consultant working with leaders to make sure we were getting the right people in the organization, who went through a career coaching process, who spent some time, coaching people myself. I do have some career coaching skills. So while that's not, where I've served people mostly in the past, that's a need that's out there now for both people who are considering what's new and what's next, and also people who will maybe be navigating the world after being laid off or let go. So that's a way I can serve the community. So that might not, again, be the way that I want to do so 2 years from now, being a career coach. But during this time of reset, to add value to my community, that's a skill that I have, and it's one that I need to share with people. So that's another thing. I think, what are your skills? How can you add value? May not be how you choose to monetize in the future or what your business model is, but just to add value where you can and to grow and develop yourself.
The idea of using this time of reset for becoming more customer focused, understanding more about the customer, understanding more about the community, definitely resonates very well. I think that's something that doesn't come across. Most times, the messages that are circulated are more about, okay, go do this online thing for training or things like that, right? Rather than, hey, go talk to customers, understand more about the community, and those types of things don't get as much sound bites during these times. So
right.
that's
And that doesn't mean that we all have to hop on Zoom calls with everybody 5 times a day. What that means is, who do you already know that maybe you haven't connected with, that both of you were too busy before, running around doing all the things, that while you're still busy, maybe there is time to carve out a 20-minute conversation. Number one, to check in, to show you care. But number two, to, again, really understand how those people are navigating the world right now. So it's not tell me the top 3 things that you're working on now and how I can serve you. It's what's going on with you. What are you struggling with? What opportunities do you see? Those are 3 great questions that you could have a 20-minute conversation, and you can get a lot of information from the what are you struggling with and what opportunities do you see, that you could assimilate 4 or 5 of those conversations, or maybe 50 or 60 of those conversations into, this is how I can serve people now and in the future where it looks like I can serve people best.
Lastly, any important sound bites that you would like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I think the one that I mentioned just a minute ago, it's not original to me, but what does this make possible? Mm-hmm. And I try, especially when I get frustrated or things don't go as planned, if I'm take a deep breath, and then if I take a step back and say, what does this make possible? It's a whole different framing to looking for opportunities versus, wow, this is terrible and it's derailed my whole day and I don't really know how I'm going to recover from this, or the kind of magical thinking that we head down when things don't go as we expected. But to take a step back and say, what does this make possible? And say, okay, lost my job, not good. You could head down, how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to do that? What does this make possible? This makes possible the opportunity for me to, again, maybe do some coaching with skills that I have. Maybe I can write and create a blog so that I can share and gain more visibility and position my, so not all of those ideas, if you do like anything, it's brainstorming. Can you sit down with a piece of paper or a whiteboard and say, what does this make possible? Then choose 1 or 2 things that you're really going to focus your efforts on. And when you can kick your brain into forward motion rather than crisis, you'll come out at the end of wherever you're at better.
Wonderful. It was a pleasure talking to you, Jennifer. I really appreciate your time and sharing your views with us. It's been an enriching learning experience for me personally, and I'm sure our viewers will also learn a lot from this. Let's keep in touch and have a safe and healthy time ahead of you. Thank you,
Yes.
and good day.
All right. Thank you.